that where the amount of money is finite, and it's like kind of obvious to see that an abundance of borrowing raises prices, and
Hmm.
prices being raised means you have to borrow more to meet those prices if you're running a business.
Hmm.
And then the bank has to balance the total number of credit against a fixed money supply, and the feedback mechanism has to be stopped, or else the bank will clearly be insolvent. Like, you're lending
Hmm.
more, prices go up, they have to borrow more, but the base money is fixed. So like, if you don't have a limited money supply at the center of the system, then what's the reason to ever stop the profligate lending and the credit euphoria? There's nothing, there's no rudder to guide the policy of the bank. And so once you remove the scarcity of money, all you have left is politics.
Right.
That's the only, that's then it's like, well, why would you ever restrain credit? And in fact, we're finding out like what it's like when a system just tries to boost credit forever.
Right. Yeah, it is. It annihilates the middle class ultimately, right? You know, well, there's so many counter. It's very clearly multivariate, being the global economy. There's a lot of things going on here. One of the things I've described is, I guess, it's a theory really that I think the fiat currency complex has been as sustainable as it has globally, largely because we've had all of these economic gains from globalization and more recently digitization, that this scheme has been able to harvest the economic surplus from, right? That there's more wealth being created, so there's more fuel for the fire, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But with gold, gold was effectively the grounding mechanism then for these excessive credit expansions. But when you remove that grounding mechanism, as you said, all you're left with just politics. And politics does not ground itself out. It just fights for the scraps, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get these positive feedback loops that just run amok. There's no corrective mechanism back to economic reality. It just gets further, you get further and further away from supply and demand and closer to policy action driving the organization of economic activity in the world.
That's exactly where we are. And it the in the dying of money, Marx calls that the law of the exponential inflation, which is that once an inflation, and by inflation, we always have to redefine. By inflation, we
Mm-hmm.
mean a government creating money to fund its governmental business.
Mm-hmm.
Once an inflation has begun, it has to increase exponentially, and we're at the end of that. That's why the latest quantitative easing was several x the size of the previous quantitative easing.
Right.
And the next one that we'll have, and there will be another one.
Oh yeah.
That one will be several x the size of the last one.
Yes.
So
Until
this
the
is,
crack up boom, as Mises described.
mm-hmm. um, this is back to the report. There was therefore an automatic machinery by which the volume of purchasing power in this country was continuously adjusted to world prices of commodities in general. Domestic prices were automatically regulated so as to prevent excessive imports, and the creation of banking credit was so controlled that banking could be safely this is such an interesting sentence, and this is not Paley, this is Cunliffe. Banking could be safely permitted a freedom from state interference which would not have been possible under a less rigid system. The rigidity is what gave banking the freedom. This is like, so like early on, this is what you and I talked about. It is the laws of the system, the inflexibility of the system gave freedom to the banks to just do the one thing they were supposed to do.
Right. It's very interesting. It's like gold. I think we used this analogy previously, but gold is like the gravity of money or the thermodynamics, where it was the natural order of the world sort of established gold as money. And that provided I guess, a layer of accountability to the banking system itself, where they all had to be accountable to this external reality that none of them individually could control. And that's what made them honest, right? And they were free to operate within the confines of these rules, but it's rules that none of them could change.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a paradox, right? It's like we said, and this is quite the paradox, but submission to truth is freedom. It's like the truth of living on Earth is what? We have gravity, or energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Well, gold was the truth, basically, right? It was money freely selected. And so long as banks adhered to that standard, it gave them, I guess, freedom to operate in a sustainable way. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's why we strive for automaticity. It gets back to this deep drive we have to find some rules that everyone can agree on, because that's the only way to have productive cooperative competition between strangers who speak different languages and live on different continents.
And a successfully repeatable game, right? Because once someone can get on the other side of that, where they are actually making the rules of the game, that's the power to win in perpetuity. So everyone's going to fight for that power. But when the rules are fixed and nobody can change them, then everyone's just going to play by the rules.
Right.